Welcome everyone to the Pop and Wrestling Podcast with me, Coach 23, where we talk about pro wrestling, pop culture, and life in general. So yeah, this is another episode that I'll be posting today. So we're done with earlier with the SmackDown slash NXT deadline review and point of view and possible no what if scenarios. So right now we're going back to a pop culture topic. So as you can see in my background, not my background in my back, but my screen, I have a couple or a few uh, MCU movies. So earlier I was like thinking, I was talking about a lot of things DC the past week, last week. So why not go back to Marvel? Marvel is a still a great uh movie franchise or a movie studio and whatnot. They provide they give excellent movies. So um they already have like more than 30 movies all across the board, meaning since 2008, barring besides the Spider-Man, Sam Raimi, the Sony Spider-Man, the X-Men universe on Fox, and Fantastic Four, Ghost Rider, Daredevil. Beside those, so this is the MCU only. So, like I said, more than 30, and I tallied on my own. This is my personal favorite or picks to be the top 5 MCU movies out there. I am barring the Avengers movies. So the Avengers 1, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, Endgame, and I call them Avengers, you know, and a half or point 0.5 Captain America Civil War. Because despite the title of Captain America, it's basically an Avengers movie because most of the characters that they have or they had there were Avengers, part of the Avengers. So I'm barring those. So this is my top 5 personally, and I guess I can recommend that just watch this 5. You can watch it maybe a lot of times and you'll not get bored. So this is actually in order for me. So know which number one is. There's a number one and number two. So for me, the top 5 for my MCU movies for Marvel, it's this one, Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, people will say, why? It's a great movie. Yes, it is. It's actually one of the Spider-Man movies that got $1 billion in, worldwide global box office. And it's a great multiverse storyline. It's actually not the first Spider-Man movie out of Avengers Endgame. The first Spider-Man the movie that came out after Endgame was, Far From Home, the one with Mysterio, because Iron Man is already, dead in that universe or in the timeline. So for me, Spider-Man No Way Home is one of, my top 5 personal favorites because it brought a sense of what's happening now, paying homage and tribute to the past, and as well as looking in the future. So everyone knows this. I mean, I believe everyone knows this. In actually a weird way, a cop out. This movie came out here in here in Manila, January 7th, 2 years ago, I believe, or 3 years ago. Pandemic, 2021, I believe. Because oh no, it's either 2021, 2020. I forgot. Sorry, my years that's but it came out after the Manila Film Festival, Metro Manila Film Festival. It came out in the States around before Christmas there. So they, of course, if you put the placement of this movie here in Manila around that time, nobody will watch any of those Metro Manila Film Festival movies. Uh, so it's a competition here. If you're in the States or at any other place on earth, it's a film festival here in Manila that's compete that competes with each other, like maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 to 10 movies now, every Christmas season or holiday season. So just from December 25th until the first week of January. So they played Spider-Man here in Asia around that time on January 7th. I believe us in Japan were the late viewers for this one. And so a lot of spoiler already came out during the time. But for me, like I said, during the time I was like 30, late in my late 30s. I don't mind spoilers. I'm like, oh, so this one came out, or this one. So I was even more excited, to watch this movie when in a big screen, despite being spoiled. I'm like, well, still, it's a full movie. It's a great movie. So yeah, like I said, it paid homage to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. He didn't even had an original villain here. He had Sandman from Spider-Man 3, Doctor Octopus from Spider-Man 2, Green Goblin from Spider-Man 1, Lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man 1, and Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. No original villain. And of course, it continued the thread for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. For the MCU, that Spider-Man had a mentor or mentor type character because in his first Spider-Man MCU movie, Homecoming, he had Tony Stark. The second Spider-Man movie for MCU, he had Nick Fury or somewhat a version of Nick Fury. And for here, for No Way Home, they had Doctor Strange because it just furthered the storyline of the multiverse saga because after Endgame or after the first the first saga for the MCU, the Infinity Saga, they decided that the second saga for Marvel is a multiverse storyline. And this was one of the first few that really, provide that, alternate universe from. And this is actually unique in capacity because, like I said, Sony still has a stranglehold on the contract and franchise of Spider-Man. So with them allowing Tobey Maguire, who allowed himself to come back, and even Andrew Garfield to come back as Spider-Man or Spider-Man, it's actually interesting thing. And this is, like I said, one of the things that us fans can't really have nice things because back then, oh, we don't like Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield is too emo as Peter Parker. Tobey Maguire, so like they called him like a pastor or youth pastor in No Way Home, which is actually there because he really looks. I know he's really old. I believe he's almost late in his late 40s or whatnot, and so it's different thing. And Tom Holland is like still the student, the teenager Spider-Man. And when they brought back this two, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, everybody, even in the movie theater that we're in, there's not that much person. Me and my brother-in-law, my sister, and my brother, we saw it, in the last full show. They just asked me, hey, do you want to? Sure. So we saw it on the last full show, and we're like, even like a few people there lost their shit when Andrew Garfield came out first, then afterwards Tobey Maguire. They lost their shit completely. But for me, it's understandable that they are there because of the placement of the villains that they had for No Way Home. And like I said, with Sony allowing Marvel Studios to acquire those storylines and talents moving forward and acknowledge it as a multiverse, it's an interesting thing. Um, and yeah, this is actually the one of the pure multiverse, and they only had like three multiverse stories so far for the MCU. They have Spider-Man No Way Home, they have Deadpool and Wolverine, and they had Multiverse and Madness. And if you look at the Multiverse of Madness in Doctor Strange, the alternate people there are actually the same people from the Marvel 616 universe. So Doctor Strange in a different universe is still Benedict Cumberbatch. Uh, Peggy Carter is still Peggy Carter, Haley Atwell. So there, Mordo is still Mordo. And yeah, all those things are the same. But for Spider-Man No Way Home, they don't in the MCU 616. I don't think they have introduced Norman Osborn yet, or Todd Octavius, or Kurt Connors, or Flint Marko, or who else? Who else I forgot? Electro. So they haven't introduced that. Max. So and Peter Parker from the Amazing Spider and looks different from Tom Holland to Tobey Maguire. So it's really an introduction of the multiverse saga for the MCU at this time. So this is my top five. I know people are still I'll tell you why. Then my number four, recently. It just came out, but I think still deserving like a top five spot, even top 10, top five spot is Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, this movie, has been in film or like, it went to like on a strike because of the writer strike a couple of years ago. So they halted promotion. Because if you're a writer, you cannot work with with the movie studio, so they stopped filming. And I believe Ryan Reynolds is also one of the writers for this one, and people are already have questioned a lot of things about Deadpool because a few years ago, like I said, Marvel was able to acquire 20th Century Fox, the studio itself. So every franchises that they have, Marvel or Disney already owns it. So of course, part of that is the Marvel universe for Fox. Your X-Men's, your Fantastic Fours, Ghost Riders, I believe, Ghost Rider, Daredevil. Um, so people are asking. Disney is of course well known as Mickey Mouse. Disney is well known as we are family friendly type of movie studio. How are you going to put R-rated Deadpool there? And they were able to answer it simply by keeping Deadpool in a rated R capacity. The first movie that had the word F, the F, they used the F word for Marvel, was with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and they used one word. They had more than 150 F words in Deadpool Wolverine, and the graphic scene of how Deadpool stabs people is still there. So they kept the essence of Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2 in Deadpool and Wolverine. And before Hugh Jackman signed up, Deadpool or Ryan Reynolds himself was like thinking how I can make Deadpool better than Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. And that's how they signed Hugh Jackman, who claimed at the time said that Logan is my last film as Wolverine. And since Logan is already dead in that universe, how are they going to use Wolverine or Hugh Jackman as Wolverine? Simply by having him a different version or variant of Wolverine. And according to to Paradox, no spoilers. Come on, man. Deadpool and Wolverine has been out of theaters for like 6 months now. It's already in Disney Plus, so there's no spoiler alert. They said that this version of Wolverine, the one who's wearing the yellow suit, is the worst type of Wolverine. Um, they haven't really discussed what type of Wolverine or what universe this Wolverine is part of. That's one of the open questions that even I even had in my mind. What type of Wolverine is this Wolverine from the animated series? Because in Multiverse of Madness, they said that the Professor X there is similar or probably the same as in the X-Men animated movie. I mean animated series. I'm sorry. So I don't know what part of Wolverine there because in the movie, the Deadpool and Wolverine, they had a lot of variants for Wolverine. They have Patch, they have the 5-3 Wolverine. Uh, they had X-Men Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, which I still think is a badass, despite the one hand losing one hand. They have the John Byrne, Wolverine versus Hulk, the brown who's wearing the brown suit is there. Henry Cavill, having a cameo for the Marvel movies as Wolverine, a version of Wolverine as well. So it's quite interesting in how they made it, and they made it really entertaining. People are saying that Ryan Reynolds is not really funny. I think he is a funny guy. He's funny, or his line of comedic timing is not really on me trying to be funny, or I guess he's trying to be funny, but the timing is there. Whether it's here, Free Guy, his comedic timing is there. It's right there. Red Notice is, Six Underground. He is funny as he can be, he can be. He's not a comedian, guys. I don't think he fancies himself as a comedian, but he knows how to be funny. And the Deadpool quips, him breaking the fourth wall, especially with him talking to his twin brother Gordon Reynolds. Google it. Who's Gordon Reynolds is playing nice pool. Oh, you tapping into the fourth, fourth, fourth wall. I can do that too. The proposal, and it was one of the funniest thing that I was laughing. I saw the movie in the theater with my wife and my sister and my brother-in-law. And for them, they don't know the Marvel movies or even the comic books as I am. So that's why, despite I love movies with subtitle, uh, that's why most of the movies in my phone have subtitles. I'm thanking Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime Video, Blast TV, having subtitles and Max on their subtitle, because especially with movies like Deadpool and Wolverine. Ryan Reynolds talks fast, so there's like a piece of bits and pieces of, oh, I am laughing, and my wife will like, why did you laugh? Because he mentioned something funny. And when my sister and my wife asked me what's the funny about it, because I know because of me being a comic book fan. So and also with them saying goodbye to the Fox universe, by having, finally, Channing Tatum as Gambit, because he signed in for Gambit around 2016 or 17 to play Gambit in a solo movie. Didn't pan out then. Marvel, finally acquired 20th Century Fox, and they put, the Gambit movie in a shelf. But, Ryan Reynolds talking to Channing Tatum, because these guys are friends. Hey, can you do a cameo in my movie? They will do so. Uh, in Free Guy, the movie of Ryan Reynolds movie Free Guy, Channing Tatum was there as well. And also you know, they also signed back in a return or some sort Chris Evans as Human Torch as Johnny Storm, and because he was Johnny Storm before he was Captain America in the first like two Fantastic Four movies. And they also do like cameos. Can you do cameos? And if you saw the movie of Chris Evans Ghosted, with one of my crushes right now, Anna de Armas. Ryan Reynolds was there as well. So these guys are friends, and they are just doing cameos for the sake of it. They brought back Daphne Keane as X-23, Laura Kinney. They brought back surprisingly Wesley Snipes as Blade. I can't wait for my toy. My toy will be coming out next year for Blade. I'll be completing my Marvel Knights action figures. I'll talk about my toy collection some other time. They brought back Jennifer Garner, as Elektra from the Daredevil movie. So this also put the multiverse story for Marvel in a retrospect of how they should make it or can make it right. And I'm sorry about Multiverse of Madness and Quantum Mania. They weren't able. I was entertained by those two movies, but they weren't able to really to pull the trigger of how they can make it bigger. They made it, a tease on Multiverse of Madness about the Illuminati, but that's it. Afterwards, didn't pan out. But for Deadpool and Wolverine, I believe right now, it's also $1 billion in the box office, more than $1 billion. I believe people are saying that it's it's either the highest grossing of the year, movie of the year, box office wise, and one of the critically acclaimed movies. People like it, even critics like it. And they're already talking back of bringing these two back together as Deadpool and Wolverine in the future, and the line of Ryan Reynolds, they will make you do this until they are 90, which is funny as it can be. And yeah, the fight scenes alone are great as well between Deadpool and Wolverine, and them fighting about other multiverse villains. So yeah, kudos. Yeah, although the reason I put this in number four, it's the villain. I like Cassandra Nova and Paradox. It's just it's not really as maybe it's just me. I'm looking at something. A villain should be as good as as your good guy. So yeah. And number three is Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie. I am still entertained by this first Iron Man movie. This opened the MCU or Marvel Cinematic Universe to us, and I believe I discussed this a few episodes ago when I discussed pop culture and Marvel history. And I I have to put this because it was as groundbreaking as it can be. And like I said, this opened, the cinematic universe to us. Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., got paid like 300,000 to do this movie, and right now he is, as rich as we can only hope for. And like I said, one of the best things that they did with Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie, is that Tony Stark isn't really the type of Tony Stark that for this movie they did justice to Tony Stark, but John Favreau and and Robert Downey Jr. and Kevin Feige, they said maybe I can put a spin on the Tony Stark characters, because if you read the comic books, especially the earlier Iron Man stories, he is like Batman, brooding, alcoholic, and whatnot. He's a dark character. And for this one, like I said, for Robert Downey Jr., he is similar with Ryan Reynolds that I am not a comedian, but I can be funny. And that's how, Tony Stark made himself, Iron Man. He made it, to make sense of this in terms of the Iron Man or Tony Stark character. Instead of him being Tony Stark, he made Tony Stark him because that's how Robert Downey Jr. If you see or watch his interviews and such, and even other movies, it's practically the same person, the same character. Earlier I was watching Bowfinger, Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy. It's one of my favorite underrated favorite movies. Robert Downey Jr. is there, and if you see him act there, he is just like Tony Stark in a weird way. So he made Tony Stark him, and just added a layer of being Iron Man. And like I said, it's groundbreaking at its time. The story was really really great. I know it's not when Tony Stark was trapped in an Asian country, they made him trapped in a Middle Eastern war zone, and they made it modern. And it's it's simpler. The story was so simple that it worked. Because even critics back at the time, like I said, when they Kevin Feige opened up the Marvel Studios, Paramount and Marvel Studios, people are already planning that Iron Man will not be as big as the Dark Knight. And at that time, Iron Man came out the same year as the Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was, of course, like the best movie of the year of that time, the movie of the year that time, and Iron Man is a close second, or even a far second, because of Blockbuster. The Dark Knight was awesome until now. I can still rewatch it and not be bored at all. And Iron Man, amassing like $700 million in like $100 million budget, and it became bigger globally. And like I said, it opened the doors to the MCU. So I have to put it in my top five because it's really, aside from like really good, it's simple. It's simpler that you don't really need, even the action scenes, the fight scenes. It's great. It's really your normal superhero Marvel movie, and at the time, like I said, being simple was great at the time for Marvel. So my number two favorite is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Easily my favorite Guardians of the Galaxy movie among the three or four, even if you add the holiday one. Uh, this is quite emotional because of the group breaking up. Nobody knows the future of Guardians of the Galaxy afterwards because their director, their writer, their producer James Gunn is now the CEO for DC Studios, who's doing a lot of decisions. He just filmed shooting or Superman for next year. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was like his swan song, his final, goodbye to the Marvel Universe. Said that he doesn't mind working for Marvel again, but right now it's not in his, in the cards. And with the story of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and how he wrote it, how they presented it, it was really emotional as you can be. How the trials of, and tribulations of Rocket Raccoon, Peter Quill's, dilemma of, Gamora is alive, but it's not her. She's not his Gamora. It's a different version of Gamora. In Drax remaining with the Guardians, Mantis retiring or some sort, Peter Quill retiring. It's really a great ending for a great trilogy of movies. And right now, I believe they already established that Peter Quill or Star Lord will be returning in the Marvel universe. Nobody said about the Guardians of the Galaxy. Um, most actors are loyal to the director to a fault. Dave Batista has already said that I'm loyal to James Gunn. I don't know about Vin Diesel and Bradley Cooper because they were just a voice for Groot and Rocket Raccoon respectively. But the story itself was really really, despite it happening in outer space and in different worlds, the drama, the comedic timing, the typical James Gunn movie was there. It was still there in the movie. It was instilled there. And like I said, for them saying goodbye among each other and just saying opening in another different universe, it's a great finish for a movie that I highly recommend to fans. People were saying it's overrated. Chris Pratt is overrated. I don't know how you rate your actors, actors or your movies and whatnot. I don't find this overrated. I find this just fairly rated. Like I said, if you're attached to a movie, if you're a fan, you don't rate it like it's overrated, underrated, mildly rated, whatnot. You watch it because you want it. You watch it because you enjoy it and then you're entertained with it. So that's my number two. And my number one, of course, I mentioned the first four. My number one is in this movie, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. So I also suggest you guys watch, honest trailers on YouTube. It's funny as funny as it can be, and I believe they've mentioned it that Captain America, nobody's favorite hero. I saw I strongly digress that Captain America. I don't like the name Captain America because it's not that I don't like America. I like America because the name Captain America is just it's like for one country. I like Steve Rogers. That's it. I like Steve Rogers as a person and as a superhero himself. Um, the story of Captain America and Winter Soldier, it's basically, the adaptation of the Winter Soldier Man Out of Time storyline from Ed Brubaker's run. So, if you're not a die-hard comic book fan, you are surprised that the Winter Soldier was Bucky or is um, Bucky Barnes, because he passed away in supposedly passed away in Captain America: The First Avenger, and he came back as the Winter Soldier in the second one. So in the comic books, like I said, if you have to be a fan of comic book, nobody dies in the comic book universe. That's mainly the joke that most writers are saying, editors are saying, because I believe Gwen Stacy passed away in the comic book. They brought her back as a clone. Then the Ultimate Universe came back. Then you have Uncle Ben dying, then coming back in some storylines. I believe Bucky was the one who the Marvel fans or Marvel comics says is untouchable. He's dead and he's dead. But Ed Brubaker, I believe, made a great storyline, like I said, for the Winter Soldier to come back as Bucky Barnes. And when I read it first in the comic books, I'm like, oh, this is badass. And I hope they made this to a movie, and they made it into a movie, and they made Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Um, for me, this is actually my favorite because it's not like I hate the humor of the Marvel universe. Humor is fine, but this movie devoid, humor. There's like a few lines that are funny, so it's like 97% it's serious, 3% it's funny. It's your Falcon, having his one-liners. uh Stanley saying he's going oh I'm about to get fired. I am so fired right now because Steve Rogers stole his original suit from the museum. But for me, the action itself, it brought back like, Marvel can do great action movies, and this is despite Shang-Chi being a great martial art movie, Captain America still holds his candle as a top, action-packed movie. That street fight between Steve Rogers and the Winter Soldier still holds among us one for me one of the top fight scenes, not just for a Marvel or superhero movies, but for the entire entire movie genre, movie universe. Because like I said, Captain America Steve Rogers was, you need to really just be a fan to understand his story or his stories even in the comic books to say that he's probably your favorite. And like I said, right now, if you're going to ask me my top five favorite superheroes in the Marvel universe, it's Steve Rogers, it's Spider-Man, it's Wolverine. Those top three, you know, in respect, in all respective glory. Because Steve Rogers, aside from him being a leader, his storylines right now in the comic books, even like I said, start with the Ed Brubaker saga, moving forward, and you will not be disappointed. Especially right now, I'm still looking for a cheaper seller to sell Secret Empire graphic novel where Captain America turned bad. If you see in the end game, then when he said, who whispered "Hail Hydra" to um Jasper Sitwell, they did hype Hail Hydra in the comic books, and that in that retrospective, Captain America was the head of Hydra. So when they did this Winter Soldier, I'm like, okay, this is actually, and then I believe they placed this in a phase two of Marvel Infinity Saga, and at the time, like I said, barring Avengers and Age of Ultron, it was the best movie of phase two. You have your Thor Dark World, I believe you have your Iron Man 3, Guardians 1 was there, Ant-Man was there, but yeah, Captain America takes the cake in terms of, for me, like I said, the top Marvel movie or MCU movie that's not an Avengers movie. Of course, you have your Black Widow and Nick Fury there. But like I said, I didn't put Civil War here. I could do, but like I said, it's more of like a Marvel Avengers movie than a Captain America one. And Winter Soldier, Captain America Winter Soldier is still a Captain America movie despite, Black Widow and Nick Fury there. There were supporting characters just for that movie. They were highlighted, but not that much. And like I said, the story of Bucky Barnes continuing right now with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV series, and now with Thunderbolts, the progression of those characters just became even better and bigger. So for me, that's my favorite top one Marvel movie of all time. I don't think anyone can beat it. Maybe Endgame, but that's an Avengers movie. But for standalone single stories that's not part of an Avengers storyline, these are my top five. So thank you guys for watching, listening the Pop and Wrestling podcast with me, Coach 23, where we talk about pro wrestling, pop culture, and life in general. So have a great week ahead of you guys. See you when I see you. Probably tomorrow after Monday Night Raw.